John Lewis, famous warrior for civil rights, said that information and technology would be the civil rights issue of the 21st century. And while we believe there are many very important issues, this is certainly one of them. And when you look at information and technology, one of the things you need to ask is, do people have access to broadband internet? Do they even have a computer in their home? And issues related to digital access in all ways. Now, we did not find data that talked about black versus white ownership, again, of computers, ownership, access to broadband internet and the like. But what we did do, and what we were able to do, was to identify areas of the community where digital access was not the same as it was elsewhere. And those areas where digital access is compromised are overwhelmingly black areas of our community, where people of color live. We look at 02, 03, 05, those zip codes, and we can see and can obtain the data. Again, it's in our report, showing that access there is not the same as it is for people in where primarily the white population lives. Let me next talk about justice, the justice system. And as a lawyer, of course, this is very important to me. The problem with the justice, getting your hands around the justice system, is there is so much one could talk about that it could be a program in and of itself. And we were challenged with that. How do we begin to look at justice? Our justice subcommittee decided it would look at youth issues, youth detention, and traffic stops, because those were easily graspable and there's a lot of data about them. And sadly, that data portrays the same picture that Mary talked about earlier. Overwhelmingly, people of color are taken advantage of through the justice system. The population, for example, of the Juvenile Detention Center for Peoria County is 79% black, 16% white, and 5 other. What that means, in short, is that for every 5 youth put in the Juvenile Detention Center, 4 of those 5 are black. Think about what that means for their future, and think about what that means for the future of our community. Likewise, in 2021, Peoria police arrested 387 black juveniles and only 35 white juveniles. If we look at traffic stops, it's the same story. Black drivers comprise 61% of their traffic stops in the city of Peoria, despite blacks constituting 27% of our population. Now think about this. If we were talking about the black population being about 58% and getting stopped 61% of the time, or 63% of the time versus whatever, I mean, we would say, okay, well, maybe it's lost in the numbers. But 61% versus 27%, this is not something that is coincidental. There's a problem, and that's what our study showed. Let me talk next about transportation and mobility. About 15% of Peoria households don't own an automobile. And the most prevalent places where they don't, or the zero household or zero vehicle households, are in zip codes 02, 03, 05. You know, when you get your automobile ownership, you fill out that form, and I think those of us who own cars are familiar with it, it doesn't say race. So we can't pull up the race of those who own cars. But what we can pull up again is the geographical data to show us that primarily where people of color live, that's where the zero vehicle households are. And to us, this is significant too. In 2021, the Greater Peoria Mass Transit District Microtransit Study showed graphically that zip codes 02, 03, 05 are underserved by grocery stores, drugstores, and other retail outlets. And also, that blacks are more likely to depend upon public transportation than whites, both to get to work and for general commuting. Now, what this means is, when you put it all together, is that the people who don't have access to a car are the people who are also in areas where there aren't grocery stores, where there aren't drugstores, where there are not retail outlets. They need a vehicle to get there. It's not like they can just walk down the block to get it. So it has a particular impact upon them. And likewise, it's those same people that Mary talked about who don't have jobs, who need vehicles to get to jobs that aren't in their area. So that's why this issue is such a key issue for us and for our community. Now, it may be that some of you, and I suspect many of you, as you listen to this, think, Well, aren't these issues that Mary and Tim have just talked about interconnected? I mean, you need a car. For transportation, you need a car. You need car ownership. But to have car ownership, you need income. To have income, you need a job and education. To have a job and education, you need transportation, and it is a circle, isn't it? All these things are interconnected. And I think all of us who have worked on this problem have come to realize that in a greater way than we realized it before. So our work as we go forward has to concentrate not just on the specific substantive areas we're worried about, and we talked about today, but how all these interconnected facets tie together and how we can come up with a solution to them.
Racial Justice and Equity Commission co-chair Mary Peterson discusses next steps. What happens now that this annual report has been compiled when Week in Review continues. 14